Welcome to the Lifehouse, everyone. Today we're joined by Niamh, who's president of the Life Institute, and she's here to discuss Simon Harris's bill, and in particular one of her own contributions to the debate, which focused on whether the repeal of the 8th Amendment gave the government the go-ahead to make such an extreme bill. So Niamh, how are you doing first of all after that campaign?
Well, obviously I think people are saddened, and heartbroken at the moment, looking at this bill, looking at what Simon Harris insists he has a mandate to do, which is to liberalise Ireland's abortion laws to the extent where we would become one of the most liberal abortion regimes, one of the most extreme abortion regimes in Europe. But something very interesting, I think, is coming to the fore in the debate, and that's that Simon Harris doesn't have a mandate, in fact, to introduce this legislation, and the Dáil doesn't have the mandate that some of its members are saying they have to propose and to pass this legislation. Because what happened on 25th of May was that the people voted to repeal the 8th Amendment. And what that in itself is a dreadful thing, to repeal the right to life of the unborn child. That's all the people did. They didn't vote on Simon Harris's legislation, and they didn't vote on this bill. And they certainly didn't give Simon Harris the right to say that he's refusing any amendments to the bill. Because, you've seen this, Tim, we've all seen this in various debates and in the news reports, that Simon Harris is simply saying, people voted to repeal the 8, therefore I'm putting forward this bill, this is what they voted for, and I'm going to refuse to accept any amendments at all. But that's not what people were told during the referendum campaign. So, who told them otherwise? Well, first of all, the Referendum Commission, who are the commission set up by the government with the precise function of informing the people, of informing the electorate on what they're voting on. Like the Referendum Commission says, its mission is to communicate factual information about referendums. They say they're neutral and impartial, and they get a massive budget to deliver this message. So they get about between 1.5 and 2 million euros for every referendum campaign. So that's more than all of the pro-life groups combined, to tell the electorate what the referendum is about. And they told the people in a booklet delivered to every home in the country. You've all heard the radio ads, the TV ads. In fact, they had access to that kind of advertising where we would not have, where pro-life groups and other campaign groups would not have. And they said to people that they were only voting on repealing the 8th Amendment. They specifically said again and again, and their chairwoman, Justice Isabel Kennedy, spelled it out clearly again and again, you're not voting on any particular piece of legislation, you're simply voting to repeal the 8th Amendment.
And so are there politicians pushing back against Simon Harris's claims?
Well, because Simon Harris is saying this and he's not being challenged by the media on this, some of the politicians are cowed by that. But in fact, it's not just the Referendum Commission. We also know that in July, Charles Byrne took a case to the High Court on the referendum campaign. And Justice Peter Kelly did not find in Charles Byrne's favour, but this is what he did find. He said that all that the people were being asked to vote on in the referendum was the repeal of the present text of Article 43.3. So you have not alone the Referendum Commission, not alone many spokespersons and campaigning groups on the yes side arguing that the referendum was simply about repealing the 8th, but you actually have the High Court and the President of the High Court, Justice Peter Kelly, saying no, on May 25th, all people were doing was repealing the present text. He said the people were not being invited to vote on a particular piece of legislation. So the problem here, of course, is that Simon Harris is denying all this reality. He's denying what his own Referendum Commission said. He's denying the findings of the High Court, and he's not being challenged on the media. And it's interesting, I think, that this particular article on the Life Institute website got a lot of traction, because I think people weren't actually aware of this themselves, and people are sharing this message because they find this very interesting, that what the Minister for Health is saying is not true. But Simon Harris is insisting he has this mandate because partly he's trying to cow any pro-life politicians. And we have seen, I think, a lot recently of pro-life politicians or people who said they were on the no side in the referendum campaign, who said that they were pro-life, now saying we have to accept the democratic will of the people. But that's nonsense. It's clear from the evidence, from the Referendum Commission's statements, from the findings of the High Court, that Simon Harris doesn't have a mandate to bring forward this legislation. The people simply give a mandate to repeal the 8th Amendment. So they don't have to be cowed by this. They don't have to be silenced by this. They can certainly vote no. They can represent the 720,000 plus people who voted no. They can represent their own constituents. They can represent their own consciences. They can support amendments.
And what can some of those voters do who voted no, or even those who voted yes and are horrified at this bill? What can they do in order to stop Simon Harris in his tracks or to force amendments?
That's a really good question, because Paddy Trubeen spoke at the Dáil last night, and a lot of the speeches that have been made by Paddy Trubeen, Matty McGrath, the Healy Rays, Carol Nolan, they're well worth watching. Go onto Life Institute's Facebook page and look at the video. Some really powerful, passionate speeches by some very principled politicians. And they're pointing out several very interesting things. Firstly, amongst the yes voters, you're totally right, Tim, there's a large cohort of reluctant yes voters. There's a large cohort of people who voted yes, but who also told pollsters and exit polls and very large exit polls that they didn't support the abortion on demand provision in this bill. They don't support abortion on demand up to 12 weeks. So they now need to get onto their TDs and to insist that those TDs support amendments which try to restrict the harm of this bill. Because Simon Harris's bill is a really cruel, unjust and extreme piece of legislation. It allows for abortion up to birth in some circumstances, up to 12 weeks for any reason at all. And what the exit polls shows that clearly that's out of sync with what the majority of Irish people think. So for no voters, don't hesitate about getting onto your TDs, especially the ones who have pro-life leanings, and getting onto them and saying that they should vote no and they should support amendments to the bill. But also, if you're a reluctant yes voter, and you're watching this, and you're unhappy with many of the provisions that Simon Harris has put in the bill, if you're unhappy, for example, with the fact that he wants to force doctors and nurses out of medicine, force good people out of medicine because he won't give them the right to conscientious objection, he won't give them the right to remove themselves from the abortion procedure and the abortion process, then you need to get onto your TDs and tell them that they have to support the amendments that Pather and Matty and other politicians are putting forward to try to restrict the harm that Simon Harris intends to do with this bill.
And so last night at the Dáil there was a large gathering of doctors and people who were supporting conscientious objection, and some people as well from Disability Voices for Life were there. Mm-hmm. What would you say to people who are really concerned for people in those segments of society? How can we really get behind people who are supporting unborn babies with disabilities, they're supporting doctors who want to maintain a pro-life ethos? Is it that we directly lobby our TDs, or can we also get involved with those groups?
Well, absolutely, because one of the things we have to do now is restrict harm, but we have to fight on. And I think for me, the parents involved with groups like Disability Voices for Life and people with disabilities who made their voices heard right throughout the referendum, I mean, I can imagine how personally wounded they felt about the result.
And also Every Life Counts.
Yeah, and Every Life Counts. These amazing groups, these amazing families, and they need our support, and they need us to speak to TDs on their behalf. They need us to join them, to support them, to help them get their message out, to help them with the ongoing work that they do. Because it is a terrible reality that in countries where abortion is legal, the communities to which people with disability belong are just simply being wiped out. And we saw parents there last night, we saw parents and people with disabilities and families of people with disabilities there last night and last week, and they are literally begging Simon Harris, if you have any feelings or compassion at all, to simply outlaw abortion on disability grounds. Like, there isn't one valid reason why Simon Harris would not outlaw abortion on disability grounds. There's simply no valid reason. And he knows, because he, according to himself, he has had committees looked at this, Oireachtas committees have examined it, he's read the reports, he's listened to the evidence. He knows that, the shocking figures, like 98% of babies with Down syndrome are aborted in Denmark, 90% in the UK, those numbers are declining. He knows that people with disabilities are being eradicated by abortion. If he doesn't want it to happen here, he has to listen to those families and amend the bill.
And Niamh, you're someone who has led campaigns for decades and done so successfully for a long time, maintaining Ireland's pro-life ethos. Unfortunately, that was lost on the face of it, at least on May 25th, and there are many, many heartbroken activists and voters out there. What would you say to those people who are still trying to pick up the pieces?
I would say, I think that ultimately we lose, not when we lose a battle, but when we lose heart. And that's what we have to maintain. We have to keep our heart and our passion and our energy and the love that we have for both mother and baby in this battle. And that's how you will overcome in the end. Because we have lost a terrible battle. For all of us, the reality of what will happen now in Ireland, because the 8th Amendment is gone, is sometimes, it's unthinkable and almost unbearable that babies are going to be killed in the womb in this country, sometimes right up to the point of birth. And we know that we have lost something precious and something incredibly important. But we will only ultimately lose when we lose heart. When we lose our mission, our sense of purpose, our drive to protect both mother and child and to make this a country where abortion is not just unacceptable but unthinkable. So hold on to that. Hold on to that, try to limit the harm, fight on, and keep the message before the people and to keep the path lit. And one of the most interesting things I think we're all looking at now is, as well as looking for short-term goals like amendments to the bill, is to building new media platforms where we can reach out with our message, because the media is so much a part of the abortion campaign. We need the media to be a part of the campaign, not just for the right to life, but of rebuilding an Ireland that holds on to its important values and cultures.
Niamh, thank you very much.